There's a specific number where your debt stops being a problem you can solve and becomes a problem that solves itself, against you. It is not a feeling. It is not a bad month. It is a formula. And most people cross that line without ever seeing it coming. Right now, across the United States, credit card balances have hit $1.25 trillion, the highest figure ever recorded. And the percentage of that debt that is 90 or more days late just hit 13.12%, the worst level in 15 years. That is not a coincidence. That is millions of people crossing the same invisible line, 1 month at a time. Today, we are going to find that exact line, the math behind it, and show you exactly where it sits on your own balance. If you are the kind of person who would rather know the real number than guess, stay with this one, because this channel exists for exactly this. Here is the part almost nobody explains clearly. A credit card minimum payment is not designed to get you out of debt. It is designed to do one thing only: keep your account technically current while the bank keeps collecting interest. Most issuers set that minimum around 2% of your balance, or a flat floor of $25 to $40, whichever is higher. On the average American credit card balance of about $6,600, that works out to somewhere between $130 and $160 a month. That sounds manageable. That is exactly why the trap works. Federal guidance requires that your minimum payment be just high enough to cover the interest that accrued that month, and only barely more. In other words, the minimum payment is calculated backward from your interest rate, not forward from your actual payoff. So let's do the real math, because this is where the exact moment lives. Your monthly interest charge equals your balance, multiplied by your annual rate, divided by 12. As of June 2026, the average rate on existing credit card balances sits around 21.52%. Take that $6,600 balance, multiply by 0.2152, divide by 12. That is about $118 in interest alone every single month. If your minimum payment that month is $130, only about $12 of it actually reduces what you owe. The other $118 just paid the bank for the privilege of still owing them money. Now here is the exact moment the math flips from slow to impossible. It happens the second your monthly interest charge becomes equal to or greater than your minimum payment. That is the line. When that happens, your balance stops shrinking. It starts growing, even while you pay on time, every single month. In plain terms, you're now paying, but you are losing ground anyway. Issuers are required to structure minimums to avoid this. But that protection only holds if nothing else changes, and in real life, something usually does. The most common trigger is a missed payment, because almost every card carries a separate, much higher penalty rate. That penalty APR typically caps around 29.99%, and it can activate after a single payment that is 60 days late. Run the same $6,600 balance through that rate instead. Monthly interest jumps from $118 to about $165. If your minimum payment was set around $130 to $160, you have just crossed the line from a single late payment on one card. And here is what makes it dangerous. It does not correct itself. Every month you pay on time after that, your balance still grows. After 1 year at that penalty rate, with only minimum payments, your balance is higher than when you started, not lower. That is the part that breaks people emotionally. You did what you were told. You paid every month, and the number went up anyway. That is not a failure of discipline. That is math working exactly as it was structured to work once you are past the line. The second common trigger is quieter, adding a second card for breathing room. Each new card comes with its own separate minimum payment, so your total monthly obligation climbs, but your income does not. This is where debt to income enters the picture. Lenders generally treat 36% as a warning sign and 43% as a serious risk zone. Once your combined debt payments pass roughly 50% of your income, you are no longer paying with spare money. You are paying with money that was already needed for rent, food, or gas, which means debt now competes directly with essentials. And when essentials win, the debt payment is usually the first thing that slips, which pulls you straight back to trigger number one. So now the real question: how do you find this exact line on your own cards before you cross it? Take your balance, multiply by your rate, divide by 12. That is your monthly interest cost. Compare it to your actual minimum payment. If your minimum is comfortably higher, you are still on the safe side. If the two numbers are within $20 or $30 of each other, you are standing right on the edge. And if your minimum is already lower than your interest cost, you have already crossed it, and your balance is growing today, right now. Check your statement for a box that says Minimum Payment Warning. By law, it has to show your real payoff time and total interest at minimum payments only. Most people have never opened that box. It is often the most honest sentence in the entire document. Now, why has 2026 specifically pushed so many households toward this line? The Federal Reserve held its benchmark rate steady in June, keeping the federal funds rate in the 3.5 to 3.75% range. Credit card rates are built on top of that benchmark, but issuers tend to raise rates quickly when it climbs and lower them slowly when it falls. So average card rates have stayed elevated even after previous rate cuts. 5 years ago, average credit card rates were closer to 16%. That same $6,600 balance generated about $88 a month in interest, not $118. Same balance, same spending habits, and the line moved $30 closer without the person doing anything differently at all. That is the part that rarely gets said clearly. The line is not fixed. It moves with the broader rate environment, independent of your own choices. Which means two people with identical balances and identical habits can end up on opposite sides of that line, purely because of timing. That is not something to blame yourself for. It is something to measure, because measuring it is the only way back. Now let's talk about what actually moves you back to the safe side, because the same formula works in reverse. There are two well-known strategies, and both change the same variable: how much of your payment reaches principal instead of interest. The avalanche method pays minimums everywhere, then throws every extra dollar at whichever balance carries the highest rate. Mathematically, this is the fastest and cheapest path out, because it directly attacks the number driving negative amortization. The snowball method pays minimums everywhere, then throws extra dollars at your smallest balance, regardless of rate. It costs slightly more in total interest, but clears full accounts faster, which keeps a lot of people motivated enough to finish. There is also a balance transfer to a 0% introductory card, which changes the formula a different way. The average 0% intro period right now runs close to 11.5 months, and during that window, your monthly interest cost drops to 0. On that $6,600 balance, 11 months at 0% with a $300 monthly payment removes $3,300, guaranteed, since every dollar hits principal. The catch is real. Transfers usually charge an upfront fee around 3 to 5% of the balance moved, and once the intro period ends, the rate reverts to standard. So it only works if you already have a real payoff plan for that window, not just a plan to stop feeling the interest for a year. For larger balances, a debt consolidation loan is worth knowing too. It replaces revolving credit card debt with a fixed installment loan, usually at a meaningfully lower rate. That directly lowers the interest side of the formula and turns an open-ended balance into a fixed schedule with an actual end date. None of these options work by magic. They all work by doing the same thing, pushing your rate down or your payment up, until you land back on the safe side of the line. So here is the entire idea in one sentence. Debt does not become impossible because you spent too much on one thing. It becomes impossible at a specific, calculable point, where your interest charge meets or beats your payment, and every dollar you send in stops making a dent. The good news inside that math is that the same formula that traps you can also free you the moment you move either variable. Before you close this video, do the calculation on your own balance. Balance times rate divided by 12, compared to your minimum. 5 minutes will tell you more than a year of worrying. If this video gave you a number you did not have before today, that is exactly what this channel is built to do. Real numbers, no noise, every single time. If you want the next one the moment it drops, subscribe to the Wealth Metrics and turn on notifications. We will see you in the next one.